I have a deductible. Brandon Marcello's 247 college football columnist and writer joins us on 365 Sports. Brandon, thanks for your time. What was your reaction? And of course, it's NFL, but with what happened last night, did you see what was going on with Hamlin and Buffalo and Cincinnati?
I saw the replay, of course. Surfing through Twitter, it was just devastating to see that live and to see someone fall down like that. You could see a couple of players noticing immediately it was really bad, pointing to him and trying to get people on the field. And, it's just devastating and something that I think a lot of us lose sight that that's possible at any moment on any hit on the football field, because our bodies react differently. And these guys are going through trauma every single play. They're getting hit, and it just takes a hit one way or another that something really bad can happen. And we lose track of that. And it's just amazing the type of stress these players put on their bodies every single day just for the sake of entertainment. And to see that happen is one, a reminder, but also secondly, just shows you just how devastating the sport can be to the body. And I obviously very much hope he is okay, and not only that, but comes back stronger. And if he wants to continue playing football, is able to do so. But man, just devastating to see that. And obviously, they made the right call in calling that game off, and they shouldn't even really discuss when to play or whatever until the players on those rosters all say, hey, we're okay with playing a game at some point later this season. I don't think it should be up to the league office. I think it should be up to those players.
Yeah. Brandon, to the college football playoff now, it was an exhilarating night of football. TCU, kind of shocked the world in that there were a lot of people and a lot of people who I think probably hadn't watched TCU all that much this year thought that this was just going to be a Michigan because of the recruiting rankings and the history and all that. But TCU kind of made Michigan play their game, which is, hang around and be able to kind of control it and do what they do and ward off things. What are your thoughts about what Sonny Dykes has done this year?
Yeah, it's insane. It's crazy. It's also, I think, maybe shows us what's possible here in this era of the transfer portal. Not to say TCU's roster is obviously heavily transfers, but he did add 14 new guys. 2 of them are their leading tacklers, including Johnny Hodges, who came in from Navy, their top tackler. And, a lot of questions out there about TCU's roster from a blue chip ratio standard. TCU's one of those first teams to be able to get into the national championship game here in this modern era, despite not having top 10 recruiting classes. And that's something, but it's also because of the portal era. They've been able to add and complement their roster with players. And it shows you that you can have an immediate turnaround, yes, but also you can build something in the portal as long as you're also recruiting high school kids on a regular basis and doing so at a semi-respectable level. And, it's happening all across college football. Look at all the success first-year coaches had this year, from Lincoln Riley at USC, for example. It's remarkable. But what makes this so special, obviously, is getting to the national championship game. But the way they've done it, playing 11 straight weeks of games without a bye week, amazing. 9 of those games being Big 12 games, crazy. And you win them all. This team just has something about it. They've got that mojo. They've got everything. They got the wind at their back. And you're exactly right. They're at the Fiesta Bowl, watching it in person. When TCU got up 21-6, Michigan hits that long field goal, and I'm going, okay, Michigan's going to come back in this game. But I never felt like TCU was actually threatened. I just thought, well, Michigan now, they might be able to come back, but TCU's already proven that they could do what they want against this Michigan defense. And at some point, they're going to tire down this Michigan defense a little bit further because of their own run game. And, TCU withstood the storm and, of course, countered every punch that Michigan threw at them in the second half. And to me, out of all those comebacks we saw this season, and I was at one myself, the Kansas and TCU game in Lawrence, all those comebacks, 7 comeback wins. this win in the Fiesta Bowl was the most impressive because I thought they dictated the way that game was played from start to finish. And I thought going in, it was going to be the opposite story because Michigan has dictated the tempo in every single game this season. This was the first time Michigan couldn't get into their own playbook and do what they wanted. A remarkable job by the coaching staff and the players at TCU this past weekend.
On the flip side, Brandon, everybody, ringing in the new year, and for those that had it timed just right, watching the end of the other side of the bracket go down, and obviously heartbreak for Ohio State, but the Dogs, are back in the championship game once again. What did you make of that contest? And now knowing what's ahead, Frogs and Dogs, what are your first thoughts when looking at that matchup?
Well, gamer's game. Max Duggan game for TCU in the Fiesta Bowl. Stetson Bennett game for Georgia. He struggled in that third quarter, but that fourth quarter, remarkable. One of his better performances of his career, and he's the reason why they won and were able to overcome that 2-touchdown deficit in the fourth quarter. Just absolutely remarkable. Ohio State, I thought, came in with a good plan, and for that matter, C.J. Stroud finally showing to me that he's really willing to go 115 miles per hour every single play if he needs to. And he's willing to tuck the ball and run when he has to. He had that long run to set up that field goal to potentially win the game. But he was not helped by his coaching. Ryan Day, I thought, was just absolutely terrible on those final two plays that they called. Why are you trying to settle for a long field goal in what amounts to pretty much a road game in Atlanta for a spot in the national championship game? I don't care how good your kicker is. You do not put it on the foot of a kicker in a road game. You just don't do it. C.J. Stroud, your best player. He was probably the best player on the field regardless of position or team. And you took the ball out of his hands in a lot of ways by doing some really dumpy plays. And that's too bad. And, the word out there now is that Ryan Day is going to give up play calling duties next season. That's probably a good idea. But, people say, was Ryan Day on the hot seat? Well, he's not on the hot seat, but the tide is starting to turn on him with the fan base there. Like, can you get it done? Can you stand out of your own way? Can you get out of your own way? And the last two games for Ohio State, in the game against Michigan and against Georgia, the fourth quarter play calling and the fourth quarter performances, terrible. And that all goes back to Ryan Day and the way he was coaching those games. I think he deserves a lot of criticism, a lot of questions today. As for TCU and Georgia, sorry about that.
No.
I think Georgia, deservedly so, a favorite in this, but I think TCU is going to cover that 2-touchdown, spread right now. But, to me, Georgia is just by far the most dominant on both sides of the ball, a team that TCU has faced all year. And they're capable of doing what Michigan was not capable of doing, and that is playing any type of tempo or style of play and being able to do it better than TCU because of the talent they've got on their roster. But listen, don't discount anything. If TCU wins the turnover battle by 2, I think they end up winning that game against Georgia this coming Monday.
Brandon, on Ryan Day, could you see him trying to recontrol the narrative and maybe letting his agent float his name out there for NFL jobs so that he can get out ahead of this thing before, say, he loses to Michigan again next year, which may not even be Jim Harbaugh because he might be going to the NFL too, and get ahead of it so he's not on the hot seat, because right now he's just on the annoyed seat.
Well, I think it actually could backfire on him. It isn't like he's really like a coach right now who's in the best of graces with Ohio State faithful. If he starts flirting for the NFL jobs, that's not going to help his stature at all there. I think the only thing that can help him is if he comes out publicly here, which he will, and say, hey, we're reevaluating things in the program. I'm giving up play calling. Here's what we're going to do. Here's our plan of attack. And then also, how do we complement some of the players that we do have coming back on this roster? If he loses a third straight time to Michigan, that's when he'll be on the hot seat. And again, for him, they cannot afford next season some late game breakdowns with their coaching. Because in the end, I think that's what really did them in against Michigan and most noticeably against Georgia.
Brandon, I know we got the All-American games that are starting to get underway. looking back at TCU and the recruiting piece that we were talking about a little bit and the difference the transfer portal makes, how much do you see their stock rising in terms of the way recruits pay attention to them and mention them? Not that they've been bad in recruiting by any means, but being a top 30-ish type of team, they've obviously made some moves in the portal already with guys like JoJo Earl, but what kind of a benefit do you see Sonny Dykes and company getting based off of just this year?
It's big for them, and I think more so it'll help them in the transfer portal immediately, especially when we get in that second wave, that second window in the spring. I think that's really going to help them. Let's say if they all of a sudden need, a stellar receiver or something happens in spring practices, I think they'll be able to go get the top guy potentially. And you're already seeing some of the effects just from what they were experiencing in the regular season on the recruiting trail. They're on pace to have the best recruiting class in school history there at TCU when all is settled here in February. And I think here in the immediate future, it's really going to help them in the portal when things kind of settle down. Because also remember, I know coaches act like they still have a lot of time for the recruiting, but goodness gracious, all these championship games, the playoff, TCU dealing with it. Listen, they're not able to focus on recruiting as much as they want to, and the portal for that matter. And when things settle down after next Monday, I'm really it's going to be fascinating to see how they go about attacking the transfer portal those final about 6 days or whatever. And then obviously when it opens back up in May.
Brandon, by the way, one of the tweets you had after the game on Saturday that I wanted to let everyone know about, you mentioned that Michigan on their opening drive ran the Philly special on 4th and goal. And that one of the quotes from Johnny Hodges, who was fantastic so far this year, once they started jumping in their bag, I knew we had them. If you're going to do trick plays in a championship game, you're just reaching for anything. That was a pretty powerful quote, in my opinion.
Yeah, Johnny was great after the game. He was really harping on that. He thought Michigan overthought things way too much. And I agree from the aspect that I think they were trying to over course correct their mistakes from last year against Georgia in the college football playoff semifinal. They came in there 2 days later than a team usually would into Phoenix. They treated it like a quote unquote business trip. Word is that the players weren't talking on the bus rides between the stadium and the hotel to practices. And they're taking it really too seriously. And Johnny Hodges told me after the game, he goes, listen, all you got to do is come out here a couple of days early, drink a lot of water, get used to the environment and the dry air, go have a steak dinner, enjoy yourself. And then when it comes time to practice and game plan, treat it like it's a business trip. And as he told me, you don't have to be a psychopath. So I thought he had some really wise words from that aspect, and it's hard to disagree. If you're a player on that defense for TCU and Michigan just ran down your throat to get down the goal line, and they end up running the Philly special, and they do so, by the way, haphazardly, where no one was really having any effort there. You're sitting there going, wow, they don't trust themselves to run it against us here. So they're just going out and doing the wildest things possible to see if they can maybe confuse us. Game on. We're going to kill them. And that's how TCU felt after that. That was the worst thing Michigan could have done because it gave them all the confidence in the world, and they did so on the very first drive. Terrible, terrible coaching decision.
Brandon, I would say that Jim Harbaugh as a coach overall does not have many weaknesses at all. He's really, really good. But his one weakness is kind of what Sonny Dykes' strength is that Jim Harbaugh's biggest weakness is he holds on too hard to the stick, like you just said. He's really high-strung, intense, and very peculiar, unique kind of guy, to put it mildly. And Sonny Dykes, even though you see him get intense with the referees on the sideline, is day-to-day. Like outside of that, like day-to-day, Sonny Dykes is like, man, it's a great day to be alive. Yep. Nothing's going to bother me today. And he just kind of rolls with it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And when he's got to get mad and animated, he does it. But he's human is the way I describe him. Mm-hmm. He treats everybody the same way. He takes his time to get to know players and get to know them and talk to them. And he understands you got to treat everybody a little bit differently based off of the way they react to things. And he's just got a good handle on stuff. And I think his only weakness is the pull for him to maybe like be a play caller again. He even mentioned that down in Phoenix about how he walks by the offensive meeting room and he sometimes hears them talking in there, and he's like, man, maybe I should go up there and draw a couple plays up. And he has to like pull himself back. But that's the sign of a great coach. He's been everywhere. He's been all over the country, and he's been successful for the most part, other than, Cal. And he's learned a lot of lessons, and along that way, that's what made him such an elite coach. And for that matter, Jim Harbaugh too. I mean, listen, when you have football in your family and your dads, like for Jim and for Sonny, are legends, it's hard to not be a great coach. It really is. You'd have to screw up to not be a great coach to be around men like that. And incredible coaches in there. But with Jim, I think he just overthinks things when he's got time to sit there and think about it. I mean, he's lost 6 straight bowl games there at Michigan. There's something about that 3-week break or something where maybe he's trying too hard. He's doing something. Something just doesn't seem natural there for them.
Brandon, anything else? Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports. Great stuff, great stories on that TCU Michigan game, and also got a lot of information that Brandon does when it comes to college football, the transfer portal, and much more. Brandon Marcello, 247 Sports, thanks for your time.